You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to ADHD BCE, the podcast foraging through space and time to uncover the many positive ways neurodiversity has impacted the human story. From our earliest ancestors, neurodiversity has helped shape the world we live in, and on this show, we're going to be diving into some of the most enigmatic and significant events, places, and people that have driven humanity from simple tree dwellers to space-travelling entrepreneurs. I'm your late diagnosed neurodivergent host, George Lomas, and I'll be interviewing archaeologists, academics, and neurodiversity specialists in this quest to prove that being on the spectrum is something we can be very proud of. So let's make like ADHD and jump right in. So welcome everyone to episode 12, and in this episode we're heading back to meet the father of history and possible neurodivergent, the legendary Herodotus. As with all episodes in the ADHD podcast, we're not in academic vernacular attempting to retroactively diagnose anyone with neurological conditions. But if we do see rock collecting and impulsivity, we are going to call it. And that's as much of a disclaimer as you're going to get. So, Herodotus was born in Halicarnassus, which is in Turkey, was in Turkey, in the 5th century BCE, and he was the first person to systematically gather, record and analyse historical events, creating a detailed and engaging account of the ancient world. His histories not only chronicled the Greco-Persian Wars, but also explored the cultures, customs, and even geography of the people he encountered on his extensive travels. And unlike those who simply listed events, Herodotus wanted to understand them. He wanted to understand why these events happened and how they connected and what they meant in the grander scheme of human civilization. His writing was full of curiosity, tangents, and vivid storytelling, all of which hint at a mind that didn't just accept the world as it was, but needed to pull it apart and examine every piece. So today we'll be diving into the life and work of this remarkable thinker and explore how his unique way of seeing the world may have shaped history itself. And to help explore the spectrum of possibilities in the adventurous life of Herodotus, I am delighted to welcome back psychotherapist and ADHD specialist Kathy Charlton. Welcome back.
Hello.
So Herodotus, often referred to as the father of history, wasn't just the first person to systematically record historical events. He was one of the first to ask why things happened the way they did. His histories aren't just a collection of battles and rulers. They're an exploration of cultures, geography, beliefs, and even natural phenomena. He was a man obsessed with patterns, connections, and human motivations. And when we look at his work and his life, we see the hallmarks of someone whose mind didn't function like everyone else's. One of the most striking things about Herodotus in his way of thinking was that he didn't write history in a straight line. He wasn't just chronicling events, he was constructing a world, weaving together seemingly unrelated details to give a fuller picture. In modern terms, his brain wasn't just focusing on the main plot, it was diving into every side quest and background story it could find. I think we call that oversharing these days, don't we, Kathy?
Potentially. Or he's just very excited about what he was finding out.
Yeah, just enjoying himself. Well, here's an example. So when he wrote about the Persian Wars, he didn't just describe the battles as other historians would do. He gave us the entire background to the Persian Empire. He told us about their customs, their rulers, their laws, their gods. He didn't just say, this is what happened. That wasn't his style. He would say, this is why it happened, and this is who it happened to, and here are 10 other interesting things you didn't know about them. And I think that level of curiosity, of needing to see the whole picture, is something we often see in neurodivergent minds. I think another clear trait was his insatiable curiosity, something that likely made him both fascinating and exhausting to be around. He was known for endlessly questioning. He travelled extensively, speaking to people from different cultures, collecting their stories and cross-referencing accounts to build a more complete understanding of the world. And I think this need to constantly learn, to chase information, even when others might be content with simple answers, is something many neurodivergent people can probably relate to. And then there's the way he constructed his work. The histories didn't follow a strict chronological order. He frequently goes off on tangents, diving into side stories that caught his attention. It's as if he couldn't resist exploring every interesting detail, even if it meant delaying the main story. And to a conventional thinker, this might seem like a lack of focus, but to a neurodivergent mind, it makes perfect sense because everything is connected, and leaving out a context would mean telling an incomplete story. And I think we've got also his attention to sensory detail, another fascinating aspect of his character. He doesn't just tell us about events, he describes the landscapes, the smells, the clothing people wore, the food they ate. He was deeply engaged with the world around him in a way that suggests heightened perception, something, again, that's often associated with neurodivergence. His writing immerses us not just in what happened, but what it felt like to be there. And of course, let's not forget the social challenges he may have faced. Herodotus wasn't always well received in his lifetime. Some accused him of exaggeration, of being too fanciful in his storytelling. He was mocked by some of his contemporaries, including another legend, Thucydides, who preferred a more rigid, analytical approach to history, which is a little more conventional. But Herodotus was writing for people, not just for scholars. He wanted his histories to be engaging and to capture the world and the wonder of the world, not just the facts. He may have struggled with how others perceived his approach, but he consistently remained true to his way of thinking. It was sort of an unmasked histories. But in the end, Herodotus's legacy isn't just in the events he recorded. It was his ability to see connections and his relentless curiosity, his deep engagement with the sensory world, and his unique way of storytelling. I think all point to a mind that worked differently. And it's because of that difference, not in spite of it, they became the father of history. There's tons more to talk about in terms of Herodotus, but I could recommend his book, The Histories, which does take a bit of reading, but is just crammed with interesting facts. And there's obviously lots of scholarly work done on Herodotus. So I would encourage anyone to look into the guy. There's tons more to learn about him. But yeah, for the sake of this episode, I wonder, Kathy, am I speculating a little too hard? Or does anything there with Herodotus sound like neurodivergence to you?
I suppose it's kind of, where do we start? Because, yeah, there does seem to be a lot going on. I think one of the things that stands out more than anything is the insatiableness of wanting to collect.
Ooh, yeah.
You remember right at the beginning you said about, if we see this kind of collecting stones or rocks, we're going to call it.
Yeah.
And this was Herodotus' Rocks and Stones. This was his collection.
Yes.
Was all this information.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. His special interest is, his pebbles. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a really good call. Really good call, Kathy.
And all of those kind of grains that make up, or, what's this journey that this rock's been on? What makes this rock, what's its kind of, history, what's its background, where's it come from? So, he's done the same thing, but on a people level, on a human scale. And I think that's the bit that stands out more than anything. But also there seems to be, when you talk about how his stories don't actually just kind of document fact, they have so many more layers, which then also suggests a more emotional connection to the stories as well.
Ooh, yes, yeah. Because he especially does that. He never introduces a person as well. I don't think he rarely introduces a person as just a person. It will be this person's son of this person's son of that person. He gives sort of a real depth to it, and I suppose that could be an emotional thing as well.
Well, I suppose when you're being passionate, that is an emotion, isn't it? And when you really want to kind of really get to know, and you're kind of really seeking to kind of understand what made someone tick and why did they do what they did, that is trying to kind of step into their world. And that's what you do when you're empathizing with somebody, or you're trying to kind of understand, where they're coming from. So that suggests potentially, again, we can't call it because we haven't got him sat here, but that kind of depth of emotional understanding as well, that kind of finding out what mattered to people is part of the story, isn't it?
Yeah, it's almost it's when you talk about it like that, I suppose it sounds a little bit like, I don't know, Louis Theroux documentary or something. So an investigative journalist going out and immersing themselves in people's lives out of curiosity.
Yeah, and how did he do his research? I mean, what was kind of his method? Do you know that? Do you understand how he worked?
Well, no, he went. He travelled there. I mean, I know he knew a lot about the Persians because he was born in Turkey, which was under Persian rule when he was young. Or was it? It might have already been. No, it wasn't already taken over by the Greeks, was it? By that point, I can't remember. Now I'm losing my timelines there, but he was a travel writer essentially. So we called him a historian, because he did delve back into the histories of the people he was talking about and the legends and the myths and the stories. And he didn't differentiate between, well, he did differentiate, but he wasn't there to document the history of this particular person or this particular royal family or this dynasty or whatever. It was what's going on while we're here, and he's writing down what was happening at the time and also the people he met and what had happened before him.
When he's kind of looking at histories, it sounds like from what you're saying, it was actually his own history, his people's history. Would that be correct? It's kind of.
Well, no, he travelled extensively, so it wasn't just in Halicarnassus and in Turkey. He went around. He travelled a lot, and he collected stories wherever he went. And obviously, his memory was probably something we should talk about as well. He wouldn't have written everything down as he was going. He would have, he had to sit down and scribe it down as he had time to do it. So I think,
What does that sound like? That kind of memory. That's less potentially, well, depends, doesn't it? It's, there's an argument about, short-term memory for ADHD, but then when you look at when it's something that's very interesting and it's what makes you tick, you know everything of it inside out to the.
Yeah, I think I mean, from personal experience, I know that where if I'm interested in something, I'm focused on it, and if I'm focused on it, it goes in. So when I was at uni, I struggled to read. So I really struggled with reading 20 or 30 sources for an essay. I would struggle to get through 5 or 6. But what I did have was when I was in my lectures, I was focused because I was so damned interested in it. Apart from when my friends were distracting me, obviously. But it was, I would write notes, but it was going into my brain. So it was easier to call. That memory recall is there. It was difficult to get to at times, but it was often once I started researching, I think, oh yeah, I remember what, yes, and I could to get into it that way. But overall, my working memory is terrible anyway. But I think most of the time it's because I'm not focused on what I'm supposed to be memorizing. But whereas Herodotus perhaps was doing that, he was probably so immersed. I mean, traveling, because that's what he was doing as well. He was traveling, and so before mobile phones and cameras and all that, you're there, you're focusing on that, you're experiencing that, and you're living that, and those conversations. When you meet people on your travels, I don't know, it's mesmerizing, isn't it? When you meet some interesting person with an interesting local story.
Yeah, and It's the character, isn't it? It's the, you know, if you think about, you get like a smell or a sight, or you feel something and it transports you back to that moment when you were talking to that person, you know, it kind of gives you all your anchors to pick everything up.
Triggers the memory.
Yeah. But then if he's got potentially a heightened sense of all of that, you know, like a particularly sensory seeking, or really, you know, he could have been putting his hand in the sand while he was listening to a particular story, or a jar full of lentils, you know, who knows, you know, what he was doing, which kind of helped with his, you know, first of all, taking it in, and then obviously the recall, because you said that it was particularly good. It was, you know, very detailed recall. Is that right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But we're just going to take a very quick break, and I'm going to come back and dive further into this. So, what other neurodivergent traits can be inferred from his behaviours? I mean, he travelled extensively, which could suggest impulsivity, curiosity, and the need to understand the bigger picture. And he didn't follow convention. His method style was unconventional at the time, and that could possibly point to, I don't know, out-of-the-box thinking, etc. But I'm not the ADHD specialist, so... Kathy, have you picked up on any other possible traits Herodotus may have displayed?
Well, I think I'm going to throw it back at you with regards to the ADHD specialist. I think if you live and breathe it, you kind of, you know, you are. Because I was looking at this saying, you know, when you said that he needed to see the whole picture, you know, he travelled extensively. And one of the things I come across quite commonly with, again, it's anecdotal, so obviously I can't say this is a way of diagnosing, but often I find that, have you ever gone out on a walk with someone who's ADHD or neurodivergent, where they can't quite not look around that corner? They've got to keep going. They've got to. So I'm just wondering whether that sounds familiar to you, George. Whether that's something you.
100%. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Definitely. It becomes hyperfocus as well. It's not just curiosity. It's just like it's an irresistible need to go and touch that tree and have a look over those rocks and then see what you can see over that hill. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, so I wonder if that was part of what was driving him to keep getting back on the boat, back in you know, to go across a new land and, you know, keep talking to people, you know. So he wanted to kind of keep finding out. He wanted to keep seeing what was around that corner, which I thought, you know, stands out quite a lot for him. But then, you know, I'm just wondering what it's like, again, just being around people, whether there's that kind of urge to connect, or just to kind of strike up a conversation, just be interested, like, oh, what have you got in your shopping bag today? You know, that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Again, whether that's something that stands out for you.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, the other thing as well is boredom of staying at home. I mean, as I get older and I've got kids and a million things to do, it's not too bad. But when I was younger and there wasn't, and I was dreaming about archaeology and how the world worked and bigger questions, the desire to go traveling was, again, irresistible. It was exciting as well, especially when you go to somewhere different. You get different smells. So, I mean, I can see why he would be so interested in the sounds and the smells and the colours, because that's where it's at. Yeah, absolutely. So different. Because the world's I mean, I just to reference this again, is I grew up rurally and in the 1980s, so in a different millennium to now. Yeah. I'm not saying that my upbringing was anything like Herodotus's, but it was pre-internet and there weren't many people around and there wasn't a lot to do. And it was it was wonderful, but it was slow. So slow. And I think to go, like, so many people who didn't travel had a very, very steady, slow life, whatever they were doing, repetitive. I can see any neurodivergent person back then, you know, you've done the same thing a million times, you've seen it all. You need to get out of there.
And so that's what drove you to kind of go beyond where you were living for a while?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And so, a bit like Herodotus, I kept coming home because home is home.
Yes. That was your kind of your base. But then the itchy feet starts again, doesn't it? And
Absolutely.
I need a bit more of that dopamine fix. I mean, I'm not suggesting that travel's not something that is purely in the neurodivergent blood, but there is definitely that one step a bit further, so actually not really always being able to go back to the same place more than once, having to find a new place to discover and to visit.
Yes.
And so, that's something that I find that happens in my household. We very rarely go back to the same place. We do a little bit because we need to also consider the ASD side of things, which is that security of knowing. But then there's another bit, which is the pull of actually exploring and having to find a new experience. That sounds like Herodotus was living and breathing that he had to do that.
Yeah, he certainly embraced it, didn't he?
So the other thing is the fact that he was always asking why. he was always questioning. And you said that could have been a bit of a struggle. I was just wondering if people have come across, I think generally into adulthood, we get kind of conditioned out of it, don't we?
Yeah.
But I think as children, before we realise we're annoying everyone around us, generally you can see the neurodivergent child as the one that won't stop asking why and will keep on asking why, and you can't quite get on with your lesson because they keep also then thinking of another question. And I wonder if that was something that he carried on into adulthood. He was never told to lose that, or at least had a strong enough character not to lose it.
Yeah, and he had a purpose to use it as well, didn't he? He wasn't just doing it for the sake of it. He was chronicling. So, yeah.
His job.
Yeah, he was doing his job, I suppose, yeah. That is very much a neurodivergent trait, isn't it? When you get an answer and the answer isn't enough.
Yeah.
So he's chronicling, he's writing down events, but his mind's already saying, well, people won't understand why. Yeah. Because I don't understand why, so I need to know why, and then I'll put that down there, and then everybody can understand. Then we can get a better idea of what actually happened, and we can understand the world.
So saying, well, it's because I've said it, that's what happened, is not enough. There has to be a lot more detail to it, I can imagine. But then that would have given him a lot more context from what you're saying, to his history and his understanding of how the history's worked, was involved. So, gosh, I've got to thank him for saying why without being quite relentless, asking why all the time, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose to push the argument further, if Herodotus was neurodivergent, and let's be honest, he has displayed some pretty strong neurodivergent traits, so it's not it's not ridiculous to wonder if he was. And I think it's probably helpful to embrace the concepts, not necessarily in an academic sense or in a scientific sense, but just to question it. If he was neurodivergent, then he has that neurodivergence. Well, neurodivergence has struck again in that he has quite clearly, if that is the case, made the world a more connected place and helped push along how history was written and how we use it, and helped people understand other cultures, and has probably brought the world together. Certainly helped that as well, because now curious minds all over the world these days read histories that don't necessarily mimic exactly what Herodotus did, but they embrace that spirit. We watch documentaries on the TV all the time based on that kind of curiosity, don't we?
And I if you notice about even true life drama on the TV, that's what draws us in. It's because it brings to life, things that have happened, and we really strongly connect with that. So I love the fact that he was doing it less, not only for scholars, but for the everyday person to understand, how we all fit in within the world. That sounds really interesting. But from what you've just said, the way that we document things, you said, has happened a lot since Herodotus has done it this way. So does that suggest he broke from convention, that he changed the way that we record history, or at least
absolutely,
in this part of the world? Okay.
Absolutely.
So he found another way of doing something. He was standing outside the box thinking. Was that one to put down?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it probably displays more than that. His pattern seeking in there, curiosity, need to understand the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, making links.
Yeah,
and maybe where other people hadn't. Would that be?
Yeah, and I wonder if also you could throw in there that, I mean, I've seen this written in various places that there's a neurodivergent urge to try and fix things and make the world a better place. It's
right. Okay. Yeah.
That's probably a dramatic way of putting it, but it's you feel very just a sensitivity and curiosity, all these things combine, and I wonder if why was Herodotus doing it in the first place? Was it his purpose, his drive? Was he just answering his impulses and his curiosities, or was he also driven to do something bigger?
So doesn't that then bring in that whole question about his agenda was more personal, more driven by, his insatiable curiosity and his, need to make sense of the world, and almost kind of there's a creativity that comes involved if he gets involved with that, when you try and kind of put things right in a way and understand why. Because from that old saying that, the winners are the ones that write history. He wasn't one of those. Is that right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Doing it more because he wanted to do it rather than he was kind of told by a king who won a war to do this.
That's right. He wasn't commissioned in a propagandic sense.
Yeah.
He was authentic, I believe. Anyway, right. I think the guy wanted to do it, and he wasn't necessarily. I don't think it was just about his desire to travel and his desire to learn, because I think millions of people have been doing that throughout human history. Yeah. Herodotus differed when he wanted to chronicle it, and he wrote it not for an elitist agenda. He wrote it because that's what he felt. He wrote what he felt as well, and he wrote what he was curious about. Because he didn't write down absolutely everything that happened, and about absolutely everybody he met. He was selective.
Which, because then that obviously, helps to, I suppose, put together what he felt he needed to share. But then are you saying that theoretically that he was trying to share the truth, which is, again, going back to that kind of like needing to put things right, or needing everything to look kind of balanced and fair and proper? Yeah. That's the truth, isn't it? I don't know if there's evidence for that at all.
I don't know, but I think there's an argument there, isn't there? Because he's writing down what he sees as authenticity, and he's doing it for authentic reasons.
Yeah.
So could well be. But we are running out of time now, Kathy. Is there anything else you'd like to squeeze in about Herodotus, or do you think that on a scale of 1 to 10, Herodotus could rank on a neurodivergent scale there?
He's pretty high up there. I would love to have met him, and I would love to have known what it was like to go against convention and to be maybe classed as other, because if he's not gone down the usual, if he had criticism about the way that he was recording and speaking, I would like to have known more about him, know him more in that capacity, because that's a hard place to be.
Yeah, sure.
Your truth.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you're going against the grain. He's a trailblazer, really, as well. Yeah, absolutely. There's got to be an HBO series coming out at some point on Herodotus. I mean, what a series that would be. I think
sorry to interrupt you, I think that's the trailblazing bit, almost kind of encapsulates the strengths. That's the best parts of ADHD or neurodivergent.
Yeah, no, I agree. We and this podcast is all about celebrating those things. So well, Kathy, that was fantastic. Herodotus, I'm going to put him down as neurodivergent, and anyone who wants to shoot me down for that, feel free. So I'll be back on with Kathy for another episode soon. So Kathy, thank you so much for joining us again.
And thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Right, guys, well, take care of yourselves, and thanks very much for listening. And please follow me on social media. I'm going to organise that at some point and push the show when I get around to it. All right, take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
The Archaeology Podcast Network is 10 years old this year. Our executive producer is Ashley Airy, our social media coordinator is Matilda Siebrecht, and our chief editor is Rachel Roden. The Archaeology Podcast Network was co-founded by Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle in 2014 and is part of Cultural Media and DigTech LLC.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.